Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing the ultimate book recommendations tag. However, I'm going to be keeping my responses limited to science fiction and fantasy books because they are my favorite book genres to read. But before we go on and get into the recommendations, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as giving this video a like to throw my channel a little bit of support. The first recommendation is a book from one of your favorite genres, and I'm going to start off with hard sci-fi and go with The Three Body Problem by Cixin Liu. In this book, we are following a backdrop of the Cultural Revolution and a character that is going through the events that took place in China during that revolution, during that time, and she ends up becoming a part of a military operation that is trying to contact alien life, and she inadvertently makes contact with aliens known as the Trisolarans. The Trisolarans live in a star system with 3 suns and have been having a lot of difficulty building up their civilization. Decades later, after this contact with aliens has been made, we are following characters as they become part of this Earth Trisolaran organization. And what these characters find out is the Trisolarans are actually not the good, godlike beings that some humans thought, but are actually planning to invade Earth. I really like the societal dynamics that this book explores because there are some groups that really trust the Trisolarans, think that they will arrive and better human society, while there are some other groups that realize the truth that they are not peaceful aliens. There are a lot of themes explored in this book, like cultural revolution, technology, human society, as well as the cool science aspects as well. Next is to recommend a short book, and I'm going to go with another sci-fi novel, and that is Mem by Bethany C. Morrow. In this book, we are following a protagonist named Elena, and Elena is a mem keeper. Mem are beings, human-like beings, who have had other people's memories downloaded into them, and they do not really live their own lives. They have no identity, no self-awareness, and it's really only the rich and influential that can afford to have this procedure done. For example, if you are someone that has had a lot of trauma and you don't want those memories anymore, you can have them taken out of yourself and placed into a mem. Elena, the mem keeper, has been tasked with overseeing a very rare case, which is a mem who has developed self-awareness. As Elena gets to know Mem, she begins to question the ethical and moral implications of these beings and this procedure, while Mem grows more and more self-aware, and she begins to demand to be treated as her own distinct individual as well as an equal in society, because Mems are treated as lesser than humans. I really love some of the themes that are explored in this book, such as the ethical implications of certain technologies, identity, memory, and just what it means to be human. Prompt 3 is to recommend a book-to-screen adaptation. I'm going to go with Wool by Hugh Howey because season 2 is about to come out and I'm super excited. But this is a post-apocalyptic, futuristic type story. We are following human civilization as they no longer live on the surface due to a nuclear war that went on there. They have been told that the surface is poisonous and toxic, and they live in these underground silos. As we can expect, these underground silos cannot function forever. They start to fall into disrepair. We are following a main character named Juliet as she starts to question the truth of what she's been told, if the outside really is toxic and poisonous, and begins to push back against the lies that she has been told her entire life. Next is to recommend a book out of your comfort zone. I'm going to go with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix because this is a horror book, and I do not hardly ever read horror. I think I can count on one hand how many horror books I've ever read. But in this book, we are following a group of women, I believe it's in the 90s, in Charleston, South Carolina, and this man moves into the neighborhood, and our main character, who is a housewife, begins to suspect that he is a vampire, and we are following like several years of this guy integrating himself into society, and our main character suspecting him more and more. She goes to her husband, she goes to the women in her community, expresses her concerns, and absolutely no one believes her, and she is kind of made out to be a pariah. So we are following her 100% determination to protect her family, to protect her children in the midst of all this negativity against her. But the thing is that the vampire seeds in this book were disgusting and disturbing and gross, and he was targeting at points children, which just makes it 100% worse. And there were scenes in this book where it made me so freaking angry and disgusted at the same time. And I always say whenever a book can elicit some strong emotion from me, that's indications of a good writer. So I definitely do want to read more Grady Hendrix. I tried reading the Final Girl support group and DNF'd it. Wasn't for me, but if you guys can suggest another Grady Hendrix book that might be more up my alley, similar to this one, I definitely would give it a go. Next is to recommend an underrated book series, and I'm going to have to go with the Ravensmark trilogy, which I just finished, and I regret not having finished this book sooner. And I don't even know if Ed McDonald has published anything else, because if he had, I'd be picking it up. But this book follows a world that has been desecrated by this war between sorcerers and these even more magical, powerful beings known as the Deep Kings. And we're following this broken world. There's this vast wasteland that has been created because of this war. Raihal Galhero is magically bound to one of these sorcerers to do his bidding. He gets involved in the politics of where he lives. He gets involved in the magic of where he lives. And he begins to learn that the weapons the sorcerers use to defeat the Deep Kings might be malfunctioning. And there are a lot of lies surrounding what actually happened in that war. And what I really enjoyed is this is a first-person point of view book. We are following the growth of a character who is in the older category. I think he starts off around age 40. By the end of the series, he's age 50. We get a lot of cool magic, cool politics, battles. We get a lot of relationships in this book between Raihal and an adopted daughter and love interests. There is a lot of themes around love and loss and grief and finding yourself. It is just a very complex story with a lot that goes into it, and I recommend. Next is to recommend a standalone book. I'm going to recommend a standalone fantasy, which is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I feel like if you're someone who has not yet read Brandon Sanderson and you want to try and see if his books are for you, I think Warbreaker would be a really good place to start. In this world, the magic system revolves around something known as breath, and breath can be transferred from person to person, and it is a type of energy. The story is set in the kingdom of Hallandren, and Hallandren is ruled by these mortal beings known as the Returned. We are following two sisters, Vivenna and Ciri, and Vivenna has been promised to the god of Hallandren as a political match to be his wife. But at the last minute, her father decides to swap Vivenna's place with Ciri. So Ciri is definitely not a good match for the God King of Hallandren, and Vivenna takes it upon herself to go save her sister. The story combines deep political intrigue, a really complex magic system, and moral dilemmas on all sides. The next recommendation is a book that I don't talk about enough. I'm going to have to go with the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. I know I've talked a lot about how Fahrenheit 451 is one of my favorite books of all time, but the Martian Chronicles is definitely up there. In this book, we are following a series, well, it's written as like a series of episodes that chart humanity's exit from Earth to Mars to colonize it. I do have a full review for this book, which I'll link up in the cards, because there is a lot to this book. But some of the things I like about it are the themes that are explored. We have themes of the effects of colonization. We have themes of the impact of technology on humanity and just the progress of human civilization in general. Even if you're not a classic sci-fi fan, I do recommend that you give the Martian Chronicles a try. Next, we have one of your staple books, and ironically, I'm going to go with The City of Bones, the first book in the Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. I want to include this book because this really got me into YA fantasy. I feel like this is one of the first YA fantasy books that I read, which kind of opened up that genre for me. I had already started reading adult fantasy when I was a teenager. Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, Terry Goodkind, all of that. But YA fantasy is a unique genre in and of itself. I really enjoyed the Mortal Instruments. I have read the series more than once. I enjoy the urban fantasy aspects. I don't really read a ton of urban fantasy, but I thought Cassandra Clare did an excellent job. This really introduced me to fae and fairy stories. I will always have a soft spot for this series. And lastly, are books that got you into reading. I have always been a voracious reader ever since I was a child, but if I think back to what I read as a kid, I'd probably have to attribute my love of books to Nancy Drew, the original Nancy Drew books that are the yellow covers. I remember reading those quite a bit. I also was a big fan of the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stine. I feel like every elementary school kid in the 90s was reading R.L. Stine, and that kind of just garnered my love for the paranormal and the weird and the fantastical elements like ghosts and all of that. So those two series definitely stick out in my mind when I think about what I read as a kid. All right, you guys, that is the ultimate book recommendations book tag tailored to fantasy and sci fi book recommendations. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, or some of your responses to these specific prompts. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye.